He's on a boat.
No lies were spoken. As the kids would say, Kenny, no cap. He looks like he always is fresh off of a boat.
And as we begin the show today, yesterday was Ben Johnson, fresh off the news that he's staying as Lions offensive coordinator. Today is Judgment Day for Aaron Glenn. There's one opening. He's interviewed for it. He's got a shot. He may be the Commanders' next coach. I want to know the preference of Lions fans. Do you want him to stay, like you wanted Ben Johnson to stay, or do you want Aaron Glenn to get the job? Comes with a comp pick. Maybe some of you weren't impressed with Aaron Glenn. I want to know which camp you're in. Do you want him back at the end of the day? Or do you want him in Washington where you get the comp pick and a chance to hire a new defensive coordinator?
Because I do wonder if a lot of people were just happy with him overall, where it's, you know what, we get a pick and you can leave. You can kindly take your blitzing defense that took a while to get going and you can go. Because I think it's kind of like the quarterback. The defensive coordinator gets a lot of the credit and a lot of the criticism that he does not deserve. But I don't know. I don't know if people want to see the entire band back together. Ben Johnson coming back was a party. It was a celebration. If you're a Lions fan. I don't think Aaron Glenn gets the same feelings and results. I don't think that people, if he walked away, if he became the coach, okay. If all of a sudden he was like, I'm not leaving, oh, good for you. But Ben Johnson is the one we really care about.
They didn't have a top 5 defense, so I get it. Ben Johnson ran a top 5 offense.
Right.
But I came away feeling good about Aaron Glenn at the end of the season. And I know if you zoom out and look at yards and points and red zone and air yards, and you can find that there were issues with this Lions defense. Yeah. But I thought he did a good job being self-aware at the end of the season, saying, we're going to give up the air yards one way or another. We need to speed these quarterbacks up and force some mistakes, force some stops, force some takeaways. They were good on third down, and they were good against the run all season long. Rico, he wasn't working with what Ben Johnson had to work with. You've been big on this. They've used a lot of first-round picks and early draft capital on linemen and receivers and running backs, and they have not put that same level of investment in the D-line to help Aiden or in the secondary to help lock some guys up for an extra second to let the pass rush get home. I think he's done a good job. I don't want to see him go. I want to keep continuity on both sides of the ball.
248-539-9797. Very simple. Do you want to see Ben Johnson back here? I mean, not Ben Johnson.
Yes, I do.
Do you want to see Aaron Glenn back here with the Lions next year? Do you want to see them run it back with both coordinators? Do you want Aaron Glenn back? Lions fans, 248-539-9797. Because I look at this, I just wonder if he walks into the room and says, hey, Brad, you got to give me some more players. Now, they went out in free agency last year, and it was impressive. Now, everybody didn't work out, but the C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Mosley, they actually went out and really hit the secondary hard because the secondary was the weakest part of the team, I felt, last season, not this one. But it's like when it comes to the draft, like, you got to go out, and I think you need somebody on each level. You got to get somebody on the D-line. You got to get another linebacker. You need a sideline-to-sideline linebacker. Anzalone is good, but you need great. You need somebody that's a difference maker. And then you need somebody back. You need a number one corner. Now, we don't know if that's going to be Mosley. He played 2 plays, and then he was done for the year.
And it was a one-year deal anyway. So,
right.
Yeah.
So, but you need a number one. Because Sutton, God bless him, he never should have been in that situation. He wasn't a number one corner, which is why everybody kept torching him because he wasn't made for this. Do you want to see Aaron Glenn back? 248-539-9797.
Yeah, and it's not as easy as the Ben Johnson conversation where it was a unanimous yes and you had Dan Miller yelling and screaming, Ben Johnson, Ben Johnson. We don't have that Aaron Glenn equivalent in the system. It doesn't exist. There were games this year and over the last couple years where people were like, he should be fired. Right? People wanted him gone after those Seattle games.
He's a roller coaster, man. To me, he's like the Jared Goff of coaches. Some days you love him, some days you hate him. Some days you need to lock this guy up, and some days, man, when's his contract up?
And like Goff with Glenn, it comes back to pressure.
It does.
He generated a lot of pressure at the end of the season, and it masked some of the issues. What would this defense look like if they add a running mate for Aiden Hutchinson on the other side who reliably gets pressure? Maybe that's James Houston being healthy, but I don't think you bank on it. I think you try to get a little more on that defensive end. Now, you don't have to blitz as often. Now, could he get more creative with some of those coverages? What if the DBs they pursue stay healthy? Do they take a leap on defense with him still here? I think so. I do. I think Ife Melifonwu had a step forward this season as a young player.
Strong.
Right. Do you get a full year of his development in the same defense in the same system with him as a designated blitzer? Brian Branch in the second year of the same defense. I guess some of this comes down to, do you really want to uproot and reformat this whole defense right now? I'm cool with running this back and getting better personnel for Aaron Glenn to coach.
I don't know if you can keep up with this defense because this defense was so high risk, high reward that if the blitzes didn't work, you got beat, and you got beat badly. And it was bend but don't break, and we'll stop you in the red zone. But I kind of feel like your luck ran out in the second half of the game on Sunday, where you couldn't get home, you couldn't lock up Purdy, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do a lot of things because it was kind of piecemeal together.
Sure, I think it was.
Which is why I often wonder, what would it look like if you actually had real defensive players where you could actually just rush for, where you don't have James Houston sitting out for a majority of the season. It's like, but or do you just replace him, change up the scheme, and see where you're at? So if you're Detroiters, where are you at? We know how you feel about the OC. How do you feel about your DC?
Yeah, today is the day for Glenn. Yesterday was Ben Johnson's day. Yeah. He's staying. Today's the day I think we're going to find out on Aaron Glenn, because Washington does need to move forward. They need to name a head coach. They can't keep waiting. I think they wanted Ben Johnson. He's not an option. Mike McDonald is out.
Yeah, it'd have been nice to have somebody at one of these college all-star games where you had a head coach where he could actually sit there and say, got to draft this guy. Got to get this guy on the team.
And some people thought maybe Mike McDonald. Well, he is now the Seattle Seahawks head coach. You're not waiting for a coordinator in the Super Bowl. Your guy, whoever he is available today. And Aaron Glenn is one of those candidates. Yeah. You get a third-round pick if he leaves. It's at the end of the third. It's a compensatory pick. It's part of the Rooney Rule extension, rewarding teams and helping teams who promote minority candidates. You get a third out of it, so it's not like you'd be heartbroken if he left. But my preference is he stays.
Yeah, and it normally ends up being like pick 96 or to 100. Yeah. It's after the end of the third round. Then they kick in all the different compensatory picks.
But St. Brown was a fourth-round pick, right?
Yeah.
James Houston, Malcolm Rodriguez were sixth-round picks. Brad Holmes with more capital is not a bad thing.
Well, Brad Holmes has shown for the first time in a long time that the NFL draft is more than just the first round.
Imagine that.
The Lions would draft somebody in the first round, and then everybody else was end up being a greeter at Walmart.
Yeah.
Like, they're out the league.
They're cannon fodder.
Right. We're now, okay, maybe now he can find that corner, that defensive, that rush edge person or a linebacker with that pick. Or do you just want to see Aaron Glenn bring this thing back and say, you know what? I think the defense will be better. Let's keep the whole team together, and let's try to ride this all the way back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it felt like they were good enough to go to the Super Bowl this year. Should have gone to the Super Bowl this year. A little more help on defense personnel-wise. You close the gap next season.
The sad reality is you're, I think, picking, 30th,
29th.
So you're not going to get this upper echelon rush in, which I'll let it go after. It's why I was so harping. You got to get one of these guys now, because when you get good, you're not going to be able to afford one unless you move way up to get it. But I'm hoping that you can find that Brian Branch, that you can find that impact guy, because let's face it, even though you're picking 29th, that guy should be starting on this defense. And I'm hoping that pick is for a defensive player.
Brad Holmes has run 3 drafts. He's had 5 first-round picks. 4 of them are offensive players. Penei Sewell, Jamison Williams. Or no, I did the math wrong. 3 and 2, because Hutchinson is Hutchinson and Campbell. So
last time he plays defense.
He does, Rico. Yes. But the majority are offensive players. Gibbs, J-Mo, and Sewell, the majority of them have been offensive players. 3 of the 5 on offense. Maybe this is the year to balance the scales.
Or just
get a starter on defense early in the draft to help get the defense closer to the offense to be a complete football team to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, offensively, the only thing you probably need to do is just draft interior linemen. That's it. You don't.
And keep in mind, they have cap space, so they can pursue one or two studs on defense,
Right.
too.
I mean, and maybe like a late, a third or fourth round, fifth round wide receiver if you want to go that route. But yeah, defense is where I think you're lacking. Offense, it's all clicking.
So that's where we start. Judgment day for Aaron Glenn. What do you want to see? He stays, or you want the comp pick? You want him to leave and be a head coach? 3 o'clock, something Wojo said today. I think he's glossing over something from Sunday. It's 97.1.